This is my public service announcement today, inspired by yours truly. I just hired a couples counselor again after 10 plus years. My partner and I did couples counseling before we got married. It was a great experience to really get to know each other, figure out our styles. We're very different people. It was super, super helpful. But then we got busy. We were having kids, we were blowing up in our careers, and we just didn't have time for therapy. What's our objections? Too much time, don't need it, whatever. But the average couple waits 6 years. That's like waiting until your house is on fire before you get the fire extinguisher. If there is one theme for this channel, I want to tell you over and over again that prevention is so much more effective than damage control, right? We've done a couple of videos on that. But why do we do that? Well, getting men into therapy is not the easiest thing. Am I right, ladies? Okay, I don't want to be a man hater here, but I'm just saying I've seen it over and over and over again. My clients all the time will ask me, my person has a substance use issue, or they have this serious diagnosis, or they have a lot of trauma. Do you think they're going to be able to get over it? And I always say, are they willing to work on it? Okay. You know, I do a lot of DBT on this channel as well. Oh yeah, by the way, hi, I'm Dr. Megan Monday, and I'm the pleasure psychologist, and I'm here to help you have more pleasure in your relationships and your sex life and motherhood. Say goodbye to the anxiety, right? And I gotta tell you, as 13 years of a private practice therapist, I've had so many clients over the years come in and say, I had the biggest fight with my partner. And I go, what was it about? And they go, I don't remember. Okay. So I just want to bust some myths here, along with encouraging you to get couples counseling. There doesn't have to be a problem to get couples counseling. It's a great way to connect and get through the hard conversations, right? Because what I see a lot with couples is if they're not fighting, they're probably not communicating. So I used to think that fighting was toxic, and certainly it can be if it becomes like name calling, shaming, blaming, abusive. But if you're not having difficult conversations or getting angry, you're probably not talking about the hard things unless you just have exceptional communication skills, in which case, more power to you. But today I'm going to bust the biggest myths about couples counseling and then how to find a therapist that won't just nod and say, how does that make you feel? Okay, I'm not going to lie, I do ask that from time to time, but that's not my only line. And I think generally people hate that. So I try not to say it very much. But let's get into it. I want to start with busting some myths, and then we are going to actually get on Psychology Today, and I'm going to show you how to pick out a great therapist. I get most of my referrals in private practice to Psychology Today. It's a great form of advertising. If you're a therapist, it's only $30 a month, totally worth it. I would say 90% of my clients come through there, and that's how most people hire a therapist these days, unless you're using a subscription service. Okay, so let's get into the myths. Myth number one, waiting too late for therapy. Okay, I teased this one already, but most couples come in. I actually land this line when a couple would come see me. I would say, most couples come in too late for therapy, and it's almost like they need permission to break up. Okay. Again, don't wait. That's why they recommend premarital counseling when you're getting married. It's to be preventative, right? I think, again, we want to get out of crisis mode when we get an emotional mind. You know how it is. We flip our lid. We have the emotional hijacking. Logic goes out the window. And those are those moments where you get in those fights where things come out of your mouth and then you immediately regret them. And remember, things can't be unsaid. Okay. So I know I'm giving you little mixed messages. I'm saying like, don't say it, do say it. It's not going to come out perfect, but a couples counselor can really help you develop the communication skills. So you're not asking yourself all the time, should we break up? Myth number two, woman talks, man sits in silence. This is a therapy cliche, but I'm going to be real with y'all. I've seen it over and over again. In my first couples counseling session recently, I said, I don't want to do the thing where the woman just complains all the time and the man doesn't say anything. And then guess what I did? Okay. So legit, I have been there as the client, as the therapist, where you can just see the guy is not wanting to say something that's going to get him in trouble later on. I see this dynamic quite a lot with husbands and wives. Obviously, you know, we're LGBTQ friendly on this channel, so I just want to include everybody. I am going to be talking a little bit more about marriage counseling, so I'm sort of, you know, tailoring it to that, but please feel free to swap out what makes sense for you in your partnerships. Okay, some men worry that therapy is just a complete session. And to be real, most people don't make the call until something is in trouble. When I initiated couples counseling with my partner, I said, don't worry, you're not in trouble. I just want to have a place where we can connect and talk about the hard things and just kind of work on some stuff. We have busy lives. We've been together almost 20 years. A miracle in itself, right? Shout out to tell me in the comments, how long have you been in your relationship? But a good therapist makes both people feel heard. Okay, so anytime there's like a villain dynamic in the relationship, not to say that there aren't abusive relationships. I'm not talking about that. Okay, that's the extreme. Like legit, there can be a villain in the relationship. But let's just say in like healthy relationships, if there is a villain dynamic, that's not a good vibe. Okay, same thing with the naggy mom vibe. Okay, also not a good vibe. That's not sexy. That's not romantic. And it's not pleasurable for either person, the nagger or the naggy, right? If your partner isn't talking, it's not a him problem. That could be a therapist mismatch problem. And so that's what we're going to look at the end of this video. So stay tuned where we're going to give you some tips on how to find a great therapist on psychology today. So if you want a quick tip on this, you can ask ahead of time. Some therapists will give you a 15-minute phone call. You can do an email, drop some questions. It just kind of depends on the therapist, how they do it. But you can ask how they handle communication imbalances. How do you get people out of their shell? My husband said the first session, like, just kind of like this. Well, I'm quiet at first, but once I get going, I'll start talking. And I think, you know, if that's you as the guy or as, you know, the partner, if, you know, that women can be introverted and shy just as much, just name that and just say it kind of takes me a little bit to get to know you, to warm up. And I think that that can be great. Gives you permission to do what you need to do to feel safe, and it also cues the therapist in on how to do that. Okay, so myth number 3, you need a big problem to get to therapy. Therapy isn't just for cheating, big fights, knockdown dragouts, although low key, I have had a couple throw some things in my office. To be real, y'all, that's what turned me off of couples counseling. It's twice the work. Okay, so I'm going to caveat that with, when you're looking for a couples therapist, couples therapy really is a specialty. You could look for a licensed marriage and family therapist. You could look for someone who, like I'm a psychologist, you could look for a psychologist who specializes in couples counseling. It really is an art form. And like I said, it's difficult to mediate, especially if it's a high conflict couple. So you really want to get someone who knows what they're doing, and that's their specialty, because it is quite literally a very intense specialty. But you really don't need a big problem to go to therapy. When I was in therapy with my partner, I just really enjoyed hearing what he would have to say. And, you know, we talk on the regular, but what he would say in therapy was a little different than the things he would tell me, like, hey, how was your day, kind of thing. So it's a great way to open up, build intimacy. You know how it is with couples, you get into those impasses and you have the same fight. Usually couples fight most about money. Do you know what the other one is? Cleaning. Literally, I've been in so many couple sessions where they're fighting about, kind of like in that movie, The Breakup, where they're like, I want him to want to do the dishes. Okay, we're going to bust this myth. Okay, no one wants to do the dishes. But we do need that willingness. And I often would say to my couples, you know, for the price you're paying me for therapy, you could just hire someone to clean your house, which, by the way, that is my top recommendation for anxious moms. Get yourself a house cleaner. I have 2 wonderful ladies on my team who come and they give me the gift of a beautiful house. They're part of the family. It's amazing. It's the best money I spend. You know how like sometimes you don't love paying bills? I love paying that bill. They get it way cleaner than I possibly ever could. And it's like the biggest self-care thing I do. So if you're one of those high conflict couples in a sort of battle about who does the dishes or takes out the trash or whatever, let me recommend couples and a house cleaner. Okay. Win-win. So the point of couples counseling is improving communication, deepening the intimacy. And yes, your couples counselor may make you look each other in the eyes, slow down, and really communicate heart to heart. And I'm not going to lie, I kind of hate it. When you're the client, it's really hard to be mindful and slow down and make that kind of contact. But that's also such an important part of pleasure, intimacy, sexuality. Okay, moving on. Myth number 4. What you're fighting about is not what you're fighting about. So, like I said, people come in and say that they had a big fight, but then won't remember about what. Why is that? Well, they might be fighting over the dishes, but that's sort of a safe topic for what's underneath that's maybe harder to talk about. Sexual issues, feeling disrespected, unequal power dynamics, super busy, crazy, unbalanced work life moments, right? So it's never about the dishes or the text back or leaving socks on the floor. Maybe it's a little bit about the socks and the undies on the floor, right? Depends on what it is for you. But usually, if we go a little deeper, there's more to it than just simply that. It's about feeling heard, appreciated, and connected. When often we're in conflict and for 2 ships passing in the night, we might feel unheard and unappreciated and disconnected. And so instead, the therapist can really help flip the script on that and help us turn the mind to what's working. Now, I will say, I do therapy and coaching, and I do think therapy can be super problem focused, and that can be problematic, right? We want to be solution focused, and I do really enjoy coaching for that. A therapist can help you uncover kind of like what the real fight is and stop having that same argument on repeat. Am I right? How many times have you thought about the same thing? Myth number 5. I just want to thank TikTok and all the social medias for kind of reducing mental health stigma and popularizing one thing in particular, which is attachment styles. I've had so many clients recognize how to spot a narcissist, uncover their attachment style, all these things that are great from, mental health influencers like myself. However, it is not a substitute. A little, 30-second meme or educational video is not going to substitute for like working with a professional. So I think it's great to learn the therapy speak and the language, but we do want to kind of get into it. But as we know with couples, opposites attract. And so avoidant and anxious people always find each other. So it's the law of the universe. I didn't make it up. It just happens. It's like magnets. If you turn it the other way, they repel. Well, good news is a therapist can help you break that push-pull cycle. Understanding attachment style. Tell me if you've been down that attachment rabbit hole. It's so interesting. For my anxious people, if they start to gently avoid, their avoidant person starts to approach. One of the biggest things I learned when I was working in a holistic treatment center is that you really can't control other people. I mean, some of us think we can, but the best we can do is influence them. They really are going to do what they're going to do. And so while we can't directly make someone do something, we can influence it by what we're doing. Okay. So one of the things we say in therapy quite a lot is focus on yourself, focus on yourself. With couples, I think it can be really easy to like wag that finger and, well, he did this or she did that. But we really want to try to be non-judgmental. That's what the therapist will help you with, and be mindful about how we're communicating. So if you want to learn your attachment style in therapy, I think it can really change your perspective. Quick tip, Google that before you go in. If you want an attachment video, let me know. Maybe that's one that would be great to do. Okay, myth number 6, you don't have to talk about sex in therapy. Oh, but you do. We're going to do a dialectic here, okay? People tend to feel uncomfortable talking about their sex lives, especially if there's anything problematic happening there. If the sex isn't happening, if it's less than satisfying, if there's like a physical issue, if there's a trauma history, it will affect the relationship. A good therapist makes a safe, non-cringy conversation. Okay. So you don't have to get super in depth to everything. You can kind of talk around, and believe me, your therapist, especially if they're a couples counselor, has heard it all. Okay. But talking about pleasure, as we know on this channel, leads to better sex and better connection. And I mean, isn't that the whole reason we're going to couples counseling in the first place? I think so. So, quick tip, if your therapist never brings up intimacy, you should. It's totally okay. Most of my clients, when they tell me about it, say, this might be TMI. And I say, no, sex is such a huge part of our life. But I even feel that sometimes on my channel when I'm talking about healthy sex and pleasure. It can be a little cringy, but it's just such a huge, important part of life. We need to normalize it. I hope I've inspired you to get some couples counseling. Highly recommend. After my first couples counseling, I just felt like, such a sigh of relief. So I wanted to kind of just finish this video with a little bit of a screen share. And I want to give you some tips for finding a couples counselor on Psychology Today. First, you go into Psychology Today. Now, incidentally, you can also look for a psychiatrist. Just quick side note, I personally refer my clients to psychiatric nurse practitioners. I find that that's super helpful because they have a better bedside manner. They spend a little more time with you. They're maybe not as busy as psychiatrists, and they can still prescribe. Okay, so you can find those also on Psychology Today. It's a different tab. But right now we're looking for a therapist. Okay. So there's a couple different filters, just like you would filter any website. You can look for a female counselor. You could look for a male counselor. You could look for in person. You could look for online. Now, one of the things that COVID really did for us was legitimize telehealth. Personally, we're doing online couples counseling. Just so you know, therapists are licensed by state. Our therapist is in Nashville, partly because I know most of the therapists here where I am locally and I'm friends with them. Therapist occupational hazard. But anyway, you can look totally in the state that you're in. Okay, so licensure is by state. Okay, so you can look for in person. You can look for online. For couples, I really do like online because we just have really busy lives. I don't want to drive half an hour, make it 2 hours. It just makes sense to, log in. Now, I will say, awkward truth bomb in therapy. Okay, when we first got in, we didn't set up the space. That would be my other tip when you actually get the couples counseling, and set up your space in advance. And if you are doing online, to get 2 people in the frame, we basically were like this. And so when we were saying uncomfortable things, I almost had my head on my husband's chest where I'm like, I have an issue. So that was awkward. You might want to back up, get, both of you in frame so you're not right on top of each other as you're doing it. Okay. But you can do in person. Some people really prefer in person. I've seen a resurgence of that lately, but online is super convenient. So you can go according to that. We've got all the filters here. Okay. So for example, one of the specialties I've worked with is borderline personality, and that can make relationships so intense. Okay. So if that's something you're dealing with, you could check that box, right? Say you're looking for sex therapy, you could click that. Say you have a trauma history, you could click sexual abuse, and you can click multiple things, right? So those kind of things there. And there's even quite a bigger list. We can see marriage counseling. So let's do, look, we've got sex positive, kink allied. Let's say sexual addiction. Okay, so this is very specific, but I highly recommend filtering those things out. We've only got 4 therapists who do this, but let's check them out. Okay, a lot of the men do the sex addiction. So if you're a man dealing with sex addiction, there are a lot of men counselors that do that. Let's switch it over to female, see who we're dealing with. Okay, other filters that we can do are, you can look for non-binary therapists, you can look for LGBTQ friendly therapists. This is a big thing. If you're wanting to use your insurance, you can filter by insurance. So we could look for an Aetna therapist who takes ours. We could look for, say we want a trauma-focused therapist. Now, the more you check, the more it'll filter people out. If you don't really know the treatment approach, you don't have to check all of these things. Probably the simplest search you could do is by insurance, and then maybe by gender or by in person or online, right? And you can kind of do, those would be the simplest ones. Let's just look at what we got here. Okay, so we'll just go with Sweetgrass Counseling and Consultation in Memphis, Tennessee. So if we click on there, we've got a little bio. We've got a little pic of the office. So what does she say? At Sweetgrass Counseling, we believe each strand alone is not as strong as braided together. Okay, I love that. I love sweetgrass in general, the actual sweetgrass. It's used in a lot of rituals and to call in the angels. But look, you can see all the filters that we use over here. So this is someone I would be comfortable with. They've got the finances over here, the insurance that they take, qualifications, specialties, client focus. We got ages, we've got couples, and the communities that we serve here. And then a little direction, and then you can email. Generally, see, she's on a wait list, so she's not taking people. I'm so glad people are in therapy, but so many therapists are booked out. I am. So just to say, you can join a waiting list, or if you really want to get started, you want to find someone who's taking clients now. You may have to text, email, call a few therapists before you get someone who has an opening that matches your schedule. But as you can see, there's a link to the website. There you can go back to email us. Just FYI, Psychology Today generates its own little phone number. So you won't be able to text your therapist until they text you and then give you their number. So just FYI, it's email or call. Old school. All right. Well, I hope that was super helpful. I just want to encourage everybody, if you've been thinking about couples counseling, highly recommend. Go ahead and just do it. Opposite action. Just do the hard thing and you'll feel so relieved after. Thank you for watching. Bye.